All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. My name is Hadar Freehling. I am a cloud security architect for VMware, and today we're going to talk a little bit about security. Anybody here do security for their cloud environment? I got nobody. Operators, developers, a little bit of everything. Okay. So let's just talk about a little bit about where we are in our cloud journeys, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about where we are, about what traditionally how people start with, capturing some of their relevant information, and then kind of, how to go beyond that. And I'll do a whole demo and everything, so it's not all slides, I swear. You guys maybe have or have not seen this presentation or in terms of this demo, but misconfiguration is your number one security concern, right? Let's be honest, when we had our data centers only and people were deploying things, first of all, it took a lot longer. There were stop gates, there were checks, and if you did something poorly, let's say you put a file share with all your company PII internally, who's going to find it, right? Probably somebody internally. Nowadays, you do something like that, you got everybody in the world seeing that. And so the ease of cloud deployment is great, but there's also risk associated with it. And so what we really need is more alerts, but not really, right? I mean, let's be honest. If you ever, I used to work with a SOC team, which is Security Operations Center. They get millions of alerts. How do you figure out what's appropriate? How do you know how to, what you should do first, right? These are the issues you have to do and have to deal with. So let's just start a little bit, right? So who here has CloudTrails all turned on? A few of you? Okay. All right, what are you doing with your CloudTrails? Okay. So, I mean, most of us, wow, that's really loud over there. So like most of us when we start, right, we kind of do a traditional model of securing our environment. We'll take all the logs, feed it to some group that maybe knows security, and then say, good luck. Right, there's no context. They have no idea what it means, and just my experience talking to that traditional security group, they do not understand the cloud. They do not understand what an EC2 is, what a security group is. When they see those logs that come flying at them fast and furious, they're lost. And so you can't expect them to be able to, do security properly and make sure that you don't do something inappropriate, right? So let's be honest, most of us start with sending logs, and let's kind of look at that, right? I kind of have a little, I set up an elk stack. Oh, wait, why is it not sharing that? Hold on one sec. Right? So I did like the easy thing. I set up my CloudTrails, I set up a CloudWatch, and I sent this all to an elk stack service. Sure. But I mean, look at all these logs, right? I mean, I was just trying to look through, and I think I've only been running this for, this isn't a day's worth of logs right here. I mean, we thought Microsoft AD was bad or VMware ESXi was bad, right? AWS sends just a ton of logs that nobody in their right mind is going to be able to prioritize and figure out what they should do with first, right? This is great for audit. Don't get me wrong, you need it. But the likelihood of it doing you any good is minimal at best. I mean, even troubleshooting and going through all these, and we can, I'm sure you guys have all seen these, but, it was quite a mess for me just to try to look through and try to read through some of these logs. It was just, let's just go right here. Right, I mean, any of these events, and you have hundreds and hundreds of them. I mean, sometimes you get some good information, but a lot of the times they're not processable for your security folks. So what you really need to do is you need to look at tools that help you prioritize and give you context as to what what all these violations or logs actually mean. And so, we all have our performance tools that we probably are doing. We all have some sort of pipeline tool, but security is still, second best in most organizations, and they really need help. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a product we have that we're using to do the similar thing, and we actually use this in VMware, and it's called Secure State. And why it's helpful is that we take all your log information, all your all your cloud data, and feed it all into this product. And this product is looking at how things are configured, how they're connected to each other, and what are the risks associated. We're not saying that it's necessarily good or bad. We're trying to give you a risk score because, right, you guys have S3 buckets that are open to the public, but that might be okay. You have security groups that might be wide open as well, which could be acceptable. You have to have a form to allow you to look at the risk and allow you to accept that risk and make it so that for your organizational need it works, and for your security team to understand context around it. So one of the things we provide you is a way of looking at, I'm just going to grab a rule here, right? We break it down into rules, which are just, at the end of the day, it's a misconfiguration. But what we do that's a little bit different, and I think that's helpful from a security perspective, is we kind of give you a graphical representation. Wow, this mouse is, of your environment. So that when you get these violations and you say, oh, this is misconfigured, well, what does that mean? What else is connected to it? What is, what are the proximities to other instances, or, what is it using? Because otherwise, it's just a line item. And from a security guy's perspective, they have no idea what that means. If you have one security group or 1,000 security groups, how do I know which one's more important? Which one has more risk to my organization, right? We're providing you a kind of a graphical representation of that. And pulling in things like your CloudTrail event. So I can look in here and see what is going on. So we're taking that data that you guys are already feeding us, or you already are feeding, but we're at least extracting the things that are relevant so that, again, from a security perspective, and I gotta understand your security guys have no idea probably how this all works. They can at least look in here and figure out, oh, this is the user right here that did it, and okay, it's a Terraform. That at least I can use that little bit of information to go talk to John, the developer, and say, hey, you're introducing risk to our organization every time you're running this script. Maybe you should fix that, right? And it's really about that idea of shifting left, because you're going to flood your security folks with lots and lots of alerts, lots and lots of misconfiguration, right? That's just kind of how the game goes. But as as you guys are moving all your workloads up there and doing more, you guys need to figure out from a risk perspective what is acceptable. So nobody here does security, right? No security operations folks here? One guy, okay. But, that's the problem, right? We look at the show, and how many security people are here? Very few. They need to be educated by you guys as the people who are using the cloud to actually educate them on how to use it and how to secure it. And one of the things I think is the most important is to be able to integrate all of this into your pipeline. So I don't care what tool you use, right? You can use our tool, you can use some other tool, but one of the things I think is really important is to reduce your risk before something gets out there, right? Security is typically still a day two operations. You do something, they come after the fact, say, hey, you did this wrong. But by then, either, your workload's either dead or changed, or you don't remember what you did because it was a week later. What you need to do is try to figure out how to integrate these types of tools like our cloud posture tool into your pipeline. So we have a whole blog. Sean over there knows all about this, but we can actually help you write a CI/CD pipeline integrated check where as something is being deployed, you can make sure it meets your security criteria. And this does not mean a clean slate, right? Nobody's going to be 100% perfect, nor should security expect that, right? The risk is not there to go 100%, but there are definitely going to be certain things that you're going to say, don't ever do X. Integrating into this pipeline and using just an API call. So, for example, here I did a call where I'm looking for how many EC2s, in terms of services have a high severity level. That's all I'm checking for. And then I pull it out, and I have all this, informative stuff that I can use as part of my pipeline to say, hey, if anything in my code as it gets spun up meets this criteria, stop it, go back and fix it up. This is going to reduce your overall risk to an organization immensely because you can stop the things before they get out. And that, I think, is key. So I'm sure you guys all use, Jenkins, GitLabs, all the, and let's be honest, and being the security guy here, all developers have their own tools that they love, right? But you guys all like your APIs. So, having a REST API accessible tool is going to make it make easier for acceptance from your team. And from a security perspective, they will gravitate toward this idea. If you can put the security into your process as opposed to waiting for all the things to come up afterwards, you're going to do better overall. And I think that is key for security going forward. Any questions so far? This makes sense? Awesome. Let me just minimize that. This is all right. Let's just kill that. So I just wanted a little bit about the other thing to think about, and this is an interesting part of the cloud that again, part of the thing that when you're looking at risks to your organization that you need to really work with your security team to understand is that it's not all network based, right? Traditional security folks always think it's about the network, and there's a lot of companies out there that it's all about the network. But as you guys know, it's all about the API. So when we're looking at things that are connected to each other, for example, right, we have this tool where I can go in and I can just do a random query against my environment and see how things are connected. So for example, right, I want to see a key pair, let's call it a dev key, right? Let's say I have a key pair that got compromised because somebody in my group decided to post it into their GitLab and, it got popped in a second. How do I find that information, right? How do I look at that connectivity? Because that's not a network concern, right? My IPS is not going to necessarily tell me that this has been breached or that I need to look at it. I need to be able to look for connected threats in my environment. I need to do that quickly. And so having a tool like this where we can query your environment and look for things that are relevant and also adjacencies to other things is key to controlling your environment. Because if you look in just the AWS console, you're not going to see all this, right? And let's be honest, like the console is not the best thing in the world for finding some of these things. Have you ever tried to find an open port on a on a security group, multi-region, multi-account? You go ahead and find that for me, all right? There's no real clean way of doing it. Our tool here allows you to just do open queries against your environment and be able to pull that type of information, which in the event of a breach or an event of something getting compromised, you need a tool to be able to do that. And so looking at how things are connected or interconnected is key to be able to secure it. And again, your security folks are not going to necessarily understand this. I guess that's my key point, is that you guys have to really educate them, do that shift left, and get them to get a better handle on this. By the way, who's here trying to go shift left, DevSecOps? Anybody? Just the one? You again? So, I mean, I'll just take just a random question, right? So, for your security in your environment, do you guys have guardrails in your cloud environment, or are you guys Wild West? Any guardrails? Couple guardrails? Any Wild West? So, not that's a bad thing, right? But that's where a lot of customers start. The question is, at what point do you start going back? So, I mean, I've talked to customers who are literally fixing things that have been out there for 2 years that they had no idea was still out there. So I definitely highly recommend you guys start looking at putting in some guardrails. The ones of you that have some guardrails, how strict are they? Are they pretty open, or are they pretty strict? So I will say this: if you're having a overly strict security guardrails in place, right? I was at a company talking to them, and every time AWS launches a service, their security team spends 6 months analyzing all the knobs that are allowed to be turned for each service, and then they'll release it in a very limited way. Now, they do this because they're highly sensitive and concerned, but that doesn't really meet the cloud needs. So I think part of that is education. So if you're in a company that has that type of mentality, I think you really do need to kind of explain to them how the cloud works, how that is stifling your innovation, and so they have to understand the risk. And so I think that really is a concern that we still have to work on, is to get you who understand the cloud much better than the security folks to explain to them what this risk is, if it's really there or if it's not. So let me just go back to this. So going back to kind of like that whole, the logging and all that information, right? You part of this really needs to be, how do you prioritize what you're finding? Your security team is going to have way too much information out there. It's really up to you as practitioners to educate them about what the risks they're really facing, what is important, what is a security group. I mean, honestly, I will have to tell you, people do not even understand how security groups work. You need to really help them. Anybody here using guard duty in their environment? Only one. So again, one of those things that's probably a very helpful thing to use, because AWS knows their environment better than anybody else. Trying to put on a legacy IPS in front of your AWS environment is really not going to provide you the level of information that you need. That being said, that's more noise as well. If any of you have played with guard duty, every time every time your account gets probed, they'll send you an alert. And let's be honest, we're getting probed 24/7, 365 all the time. It's a lot of noise. So again, it's going to be you need to help tune and help your security folks understand what it is that they're dealing with. And lastly, you really need to take a risk-based approach. Like, this is the biggest thing I'm going to, the takeaway for you guys is understand risk and educate your security team. And again, it's a little odd for you guys, I know, to like talk to security, but explain to them that they really need to take a risk-based approach, right? If they say no to everything, we're no longer going to be a company. We're not going to be able to function. So there has to be a little give and take. The data center, right, if we all started with, and the traditional stuff, that risk model is very different than the cloud. There are some enhancements and capabilities that the cloud provides out of the box that, we can't do in the data center. Let's be honest. If there's the idea of zero trust, right, where you don't trust anything on your network. In your data center, by default, everybody runs a LAN, and you can have access to everything on your LAN. In AWS, you have to specify which port protocol is allowed to communicate to which port protocol. That is called zero trust, right? Most practitioners don't really understand that. They want to, they think they need to do all that. So there are some inherent security features that are available to you just by using a cloud. So, educate them, really have them understand that a risk-based model will enable them to, move at the speed that you need to without adding any more risk to the organization, and leverage that API integrated into your CI/CD pipeline. So if you can reduce your risk earlier on in the deployment cycle, you're going to win, and they're going to be much happier because, you can get rid of 80% of that risk before it even gets out there, and so then you're just dealing with like day 2 operations or changes after the fact, much smaller radius of things to deal with. So highly recommend that. All right, I think I'm almost out of time. Any questions? Concerns? Security, you guys are excited for security, right? It's a beast. I know we all love it and hate it, but we don't want to be on the front page, so there's that too. Okay. Thanks, everybody.